What's up, everyone? This is the Next Day podcast, episode 203 with Mikel
and Tanyka.
where we have conversations on different topics. So, on today's episode, we're going to be doing a similar type of topic on today's episode, and Tanika is going to introduce you with that topic. Tanika?
Okay, so we're tackling this topic. This topic is a long one. We are doing the case of Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. This is a true crime case. This is going to be a tough one because this is involving children as well. But was definitely one of the most talked about true crime cases in more recent years. Still going on. We have talked about them in like our 3 topic episodes in the sense of we'll get to it, but they have been brought up very briefly. Have not done the full case. That's what we're going to be doing.
Right.
Do you know anything about this case? Anything at all? Have you heard about it in the news besides what we've talked about? If you don't remember, that's one thing.
Not exactly. No, I haven't heard too much about this case at all.
All right. Well, for those who don't know this case, buckle up because this is an insane case. Okay. So let's start in the beginning. So the Vallow Daybell Doomsday Murders consists of a series of killings, including, as I've mentioned, child murder, filicide, and spousal murder committed by an American couple named Lori Vallow Daybell and Chad Daybell. Chad and Lori led a Mormon religious sect described in the media as a doomsday cult. We've all heard of these doomsday cults. The murder started when Lori's estranged husband, Charles Vallow, when he was shot dead by her brother, Alex Cox, on July 11, 2019, in Chandler, Arizona. More on that later. Next, Lori's daughter, Tylee, who was 16, and their adopted son, Joshua Jackson J.J. Vallow, which we'll kind of talk about that a little bit more too, because that's a whole other thing that's sad about this case, disappeared from their home in Rexburg, Idaho on September 9th and 23rd, 2019, respectively. Their remains were then found on June 9th, 2020. They had been buried on a property owned by Chad, who was Lori's lover at the time of their deaths and had become her husband by the time their bodies were found. On October 2nd, 2019, Lori's nephew-in-law, Brandon Boudreaux, survived a murder attempt in Gilbert, Arizona. On October 19th, Chad Daybell's wife, Tammy, was murdered at their home in Rexburg. I don't know if they've actually... No, I think they have determined that she was murdered. Because duh, she was. But, yeah, more on that later. Lori's brother then, Alex Cox. If you remember, I mentioned him a few seconds ago. He killed the estranged husband of Lori Vallow. He then died of mysterious reasons that they're still trying to investigate on. So, if you're catching what's happening here, this case is a mess. Because there's so many different moving parts in this that there's nothing quite like this case. Okay. So, kind of starting from the beginning here now, because we kind of did all of that. Now we'll go into more detail. At the time of the murders, Chad and Lori were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS, means they were Mormon. However, their beliefs had deviated significantly from mainstream Mormonism. Chad was an apocalyptic author, if you want to call him that, because he sucked, and publisher who claimed to have visions of the future and to have lived through multiple past lives and prophesied the world would end in July of 2020. Now, depending on how you look at things, Maybe some of you think that the world did end in some form in July 2020. But
Uh-huh.
essentially, in the way they were talking, 6 years later, y'all were still here. So, yeah. Lori had come to share his fringe beliefs. She was kind of teetering before that, but then met him. All things went to hell. She became convinced that she was a deity destined to play a role in the coming apocalypse, and that her family was getting in the way of her mission. Gloria was later nicknamed Doomsday Mom by the media. Um, the case was set in motion by the children's disappearances. That's kind of what really sparked this case into the media, and then everything else came to fruition.
Hmm.
Tylee was last seen alive on September 8th, 2019, and then JJ on September 22nd, 2019. If they don't get into it here, I will. Kind of how that what they believe happened. In late November 2019, after police questioned Lori about JJ's whereabouts, she and Chad abruptly vacated their homes in Idaho and left for Hawaii. As police searched for JJ, they discovered that Tylee was also missing because what she was telling people was that Tylee was in college. She's out of the house now. So no one was ever going to worry about where she was. I think she was also because Lori has an older son from a different marriage because she's been married 4 times.
Right.
Um, he would text Tylee because they had a very close relationship, and he was still getting text messages. I don't know if the entire time, but for some time he was still getting text messages from her. But
Uh,
if you watch the documentary on Netflix, he did say that by a certain time when Tylee was most likely gone, the text messages, how they came across to him, they were very different. It wasn't how she would speak. So there's also a little bit of that as well. He was older. I think he was married at this point. So I think he really got away scot-free from all of this because he wasn't directly in the home when a lot of this was happening. So, um, so where am I here? Okay, so investigations revealed that Tylee and JJ's disappearances had been preceded and followed by the suspicious deaths of Lori and Chad's respective spouses, and by the attempt on Brandon Boudreaux's life. More on him later, because they won't, I will. Lori and Chad had married 2 weeks after the death of Chad's first wife, Tammy. After the children's disappearances became known, Tammy's body was exhumed by law enforcement. She was autopsied, and her death was ruled a homicide. Because initially they thought it was um, just natural death. On February 20th, 2020, Lori was arrested for desertion and non-support of her children. So basically what happened is they said, you have this, by this date, you need to present your children to the authorities. And that obviously did not happen because at this point, her children were already dead. And then she was arrested. Um, so on June 9th, police
uh,
discovered the remains of Tylee and JJ during a search at Chad's property. Um, Chad was then arrested. The greatest thing about this is he was on the phone with her, telling her, "Oh, I think they found them. I don't think I can call you later."
uh,
It was like, it's like, you guys are ridiculous. Like, it's
uh,
ridiculous. So, on May 25th, 2021, he and Lori were charged with the first-degree murders of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. Prosecutors said that the couple had conspired with Alex Cox, so her brother, to commit the murders as part of their apocalyptic beliefs, but also to remove obstacles to their affair and to collect life insurance money and the children's Social Security benefits, using religion to justify their crimes.
uh,
Lori and Chad were tried separately. On May 12th, 2023, Lori was found guilty of all charges related to the killings of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. On July 31st, she was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Bye, bitch. On May 30th, 2024, Chad was also found guilty of all charges. On June 1st, he was sentenced to death. Bye. Good. After her sentencing in Idaho, Lori was extradited to Arizona to stand trial there twice. First for the murder of Charles Fallow, so her ex-husband, well, estranged husband, and then for the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux. Lori acted as her own attorney because narcissism during both of her Arizona trials, causing multiple incidents with the court. On April 22nd, 2025, she was found guilty of conspiring to murder Charles Fallow. On June 12th, she was found guilty of conspiring to murder Brandon Boudreaux. On July 25th, she was given 2 additional life sentences. Both Chad and Lori have appealed their sentencing, which sucks.
Mm,
So that's it in a nutshell. But like I said, there's still so much to talk about, like all of those little things.
right.
This is a huge case, like I've said. So, so a little background on these dumbasses. Chad Guy Daybell was born on August 11th, 1968 in Provo, Utah, to a Mormon family and grew up in the neighboring city of Springville. He was accepted and enrolled at Brigham Young University, BYU, Mormon school, after high school. 1 year into college, he applied to be a missionary, for which he spent 2 years in New Jersey. He then resumed his studies and graduated from BYU with a BA in journalism. Chad married Tammy Douglas on March 9th, 1990. They had 5 children. Chad worked for a time as a copy editor for the Ogden Standard Examiner. At various times during and after his studies, he supported himself by working as a gravedigger and then as a cemetery sexton for Springville. Um, Chad's first religion themed novel, titled An Errand for Emma, was published in 1999 by the Springville based publisher Cedar Fort Inc. He eventually left his employment at the cemetery to focus on his writing. Don't know why he thought that he would be successful in that because, from what I've heard, he's not a good author.
Right.
In
Mm,
2001, he published One Foot in the Grave, a nonfiction book that chronicled his experiences working in cemeteries. In 2004, Chad and his wife founded Spring Creek Book Company, which he used to self-publish his beliefs regarding the end times, as well as other religion-themed books aimed at a Mormon audience. By the end of the 2000s, the Daybells were facing financial problems. At that time, Chad's publishing business provided an annual income of approximately $2,000. Both spouses had to work part-time jobs to supplement that income, with Chad being employed again as a cemetery sexton. Eventually, Chad salvaged his company and found an audience among people concerned by the second coming of Jesus, becoming a popular, and speaking in some radical Mormon circles. He published dozens of fiction and nonfiction books by himself or other authors. Chad's novels often depicted apocalyptic situations and dystopian features, don't know what that is, and featured characters based on his own family. In a memoir called Living on the Edge of Heaven, he claimed to have 2 near-death experiences that allowed him to receive supernatural visions from beyond the veil. A reoccurring theme in Chad's writings was a supernatural voice giving instructions and advice to him or to his characters. He commented, quote, "I don't fictionalize any of the events portrayed in my books. I'm really not that creative. My torn veil allows information to be downloaded into my brain from the other side. The scenes I'm shown are real events that will happen." Chad was also a regular contributor to another Voice of Warning, which was a Mormon paid forum where he would discuss his near death experiences and thoughts on the future. Um, where am I here? Over time, Chad's religious beliefs became increasingly extreme. Jason, I think it's William, the husband of Tammy's sister, later recalled that Chad's views had started changing around 2006 or 2007, and he became hyper focused on preparing for end of times. In 2010 or 2011, Chad started claiming he had visions about how the end of the world would occur. In 2013, he began prophesizing there would be earthquakes, war, and destruction in the Americas. So, just everyday occurrences? Okay. During the 2010s, Chad became the publisher of apocalyptic author and self-proclaimed clairvoyant Julie Rowe. She and Chad made similar prophecies about the end times and claims about their own connections to the spirit world. Both were popular among Mormon preppers who believed the end of the world to be imminent and considered regrouping in tent cities to await doomsday. Susan Freeman, another author published by Chad, later said that she had stopped working with him in the 2010s over concerns about his radicalization and his deviation from Mormon teachings, becoming becoming convinced that his beliefs were dangerous. You don't say. In 2015, Chad claimed he heard the voice, whatever voice that is, telling him to relocate to Rexburg, Idaho. He and Tammy moved there from Springville that June. Chad said that he had had a vision that Utah would be devastated by an earthquake in 2015. Now let's move on to Lori. So Lori Noreen Ryan Daybell, also referred to as Lori Vallow Daybell, was born Lori Noreen Cox on June 26, 1973 in Loma Linda, California. She grew up in a Mormon family. Her parents were protesters who adhered to sovereign citizen, God, so that's where this came from, ideology and were in a conflict with the IRS for about 2 decades. In 1992, at the age of 19, Lori married her high school boyfriend, but the marriage ended in divorce shortly afterwards. In October 1995, Lori married again and had a son named Colby, so that's who I was talking about before, in 1996, before divorcing that husband in 1998. She worked for some time as a hairdresser. In 2004, she was a contestant in both the Mrs. Texas beauty pageant and a little game show that maybe you've heard of called Wheel of Fortune,
Huh.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
Um, in 2001, Lori married Joseph Anthony Ryan Jr., who gave his name to Colby. So I don't know if he adopted Colby or how that worked, but anyways. The couple's daughter, Tylee, was born in 2002. Lori and Ryan divorced in 2005, subsequently engaging in a bitter custody battle during which she accused him of sexually assaulting both of the children. I'm going to say this right now. From what I understand from Colby, not true.
Uh-huh.
That never happened.
Uh-huh.
Um, Lori's brother, Alex, attacked Ryan in 2007, claiming he had been abusive to Lori and the children. Let's just say Cox was a little, like Alex, was a little bit of a puppy dog. He did whatever Lori wanted him to do. And look where that got him. Um, Cox served 90 days in jail for this incident. In 2020, Colby claimed during an interview that as a child he had. Oh, so sorry, I was incorrect. He did say that he had been sexually abused by Ryan. So sorry, I was incorrect in that. Anyways, um, okay, so he sucks. In 2018, Ryan was found dead in his apartment from what was determined to be God, art, arterial or something to do with the heart, um, some sort of heart disease. Because I can't say this. After Laura's arrest in 2020, and after a reporting surfaced in which she mentioned wanting to kill Ryan, like Neffy killed, police, I don't know what that means, police reviewed Ryan's death. Nothing was found to suspect foul play, though. In February 2006, Lori married Leland Charles Anthony Vallow, who commonly went by the name Charles. In 2013, the couple adopted Charles's grandnephew, Joshua Jackson, or JJ Vallow. So again, JJ is his relative, is his sister's child. She couldn't take care of him. I don't know what her reasons were. I will say, which adds another layer of sadness to the story, JJ was autistic. So I don't know if there was, maybe she couldn't handle that or there's something going on with her. I cannot remember that detail, but this was his blood relative. Um, so so yeah, as the boy's birth parents were unable to care for him because of his biological parents' substance abuse, so that was probably why. JJ was born with drugs in his system and spent time in the neonatal intensive care unit, which is horrible.
Huh.
As a baby, he was taken care of for nearly a year by his grandparents, Kay, and Larry Woodcock, um, who really advocated for these kids, like really did,
Huh.
before being adopted by Charles. JJ was eventually diagnosed with autism, as I just mentioned. So Around 2015, Lori became interested in Chad Daybell's Standing in Holy Places series of books. Over the next years, she became increasingly invested in radical religious beliefs, reading books about near death experiences and listening to podcasts by excommunicated Mormons, because this is not what Mormons teach. So
Right.
they'll excommunicate you and be like, no, you
Uh-huh.
can't be here.
Uh-huh. Huh.
In October 2018, together with Melanie Gibb, more on her in a second, and Zulema Pastinis, again, more on both of them later,
Uh-huh.
whom she had recently befriended, Lori attended a Preparing a People event where she met Chad for the first time. Gibb and Pastinis both said that Lori had behaved in a very flirtatious manner with Chad at the conference. Chad claimed to Lori that they had been married in multiple previous lifetimes. So you just look upon her and say, "You're my wife in previous lifetimes."
Uh-huh.
What? Someone in their
Okay.
right mind is going to be like, "Get away from me." But she was not in her right mind. So they started communicating privately afterwards. So cheating on both sides.
Oh,
After their initial meeting, Lori's husband went on a business trip, giving her the opportunity to hold a small overnight gathering at her home. Chad and Gibb, so Melanie Gibb, were among the attendees. And I want to stress too, Melanie Gibb, I believe, was her cousin. If not cousin, they are related, Lori and her. Um, anyways, so yeah, Chad and Gibb were among the attendees, with Chad captivating Lori and the group by sharing his Mormon influenced but unique beliefs. Lori developed a strong attachment to Chad and his teachings. The two eventually became lovers. Ew. On December 5th, 2018, Chad and Lori appeared together on the Preparing a People podcast episode titled Time to Warrior Up. The two were featured in several other episodes, because yes, there are Doomsday podcast episodes out there.
huh. Uh,
A religious group formed around Chad and his teachings. He and Lori told their followers that they belonged to the Church of the Firstborn, of which Chad was the leader. Of course he is. The group included Lori's niece, Melanie Boudreau. So sorry, okay, I was wrong. Melanie Boudreau is her niece.
right.
Melanie Gibb was her friend. Then Alex Cox was included, and Passatines, so that's Zulema,
Mhm.
who would become Alex Cox's, the brother, girlfriend, and then wife. You following?
Yeah.
Follow
I
the
hear you.
people here? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gibb and Lori co-hosted a podcast called Feel the Fire. I don't know what that means, but anyways.
Huh.
So if you want a little bit, I'm going to do this very quickly because I don't care, but here are their
Mhm.
beliefs here, okay? Reincarnation, which seems fun enough, right? Let's
All
see
right.
what they have
Yeah.
to say. A concept which is not as accepted by the LDS Church. Similarly to Christianity, we do not believe in reincarnation either.
Uh-huh.
But this did play a key part in Chad's religious views. He
Um.
claimed to have lived 31 previous lives on different planets, so not just on this one, and that Lori had lived 21 separate lives, 5 of which coincided with his own experiences on Earth. Okay,
Huh.
I'm gonna skip ahead. Um, because I don't care.
All right.
Chad also claimed to be oh no, there's more reincarnation. I don't care. Oh, this part I do need to talk about. This part's important. Chad categorized people as light or dark based on his assigning them an affiliation with Jesus Christ or Satan. So if you're light, you're with Jesus. If you're dark, you're with Satan. Okay?
Huh.
This is very important for what's to come later on. He and Lori employed a unique scoring system for good and evil, assigning every person a rating from light to dark. According to their belief system, dark people were possessed by evil spirits. The group often joined in casting ceremonies where they would try to cast away evil spirits through prayers and scripture readings. This part I did not know. They claim that in some cases, possessed people could become zombies, and that the only way to banish a zombie was to kill the person.
Mhm.
If you don't know the story, hold on to that, please. That's going to make everything make sense. Not sense, but in their minds. 7 women within the group, including Lori and Zulema, called themselves the Seven Gatherers and would do castings together, sometimes via Zoom. Because again, we're also dealing with COVID eventually. So
Huh.
we'll do this by Zoom. Um, so Chad and Lori also scored people in a vibration scale and deemed those having enough vibrations to possess special powers or to be translated. Their beliefs also included teleportation and dark and light portals. Child claimed that he could create such supernatural portals, which he used to interact spiritually with Lori, receive revelations, and travel to other realms. Okay, this man is busy.
Huh.
Um, so that's basically, I'll keep it there, but here's
All right.
another thing. Lori came to believe that she was an exalted goddess with visionary powers, and that she and Chad were destined to lead the 144,000 people who would survive when the world ended. Zulema later told investigators that Lori believed that as an exalted being, she couldn't be held responsible for her actions here on Earth. For example, killing people.
Hmm.
Um, so that's the more important things that you need to know for what's about to come next.
All right.
So now we're going to head into the murder of Charles Fallow. So in February 2019, Lori reportedly informed Charles that she no longer cared about him or JJ for that matter, yet she would fight for him. Okay. She then vanished for 58 days. She was just gone. The
Wow.
same month, Charles filed for divorce, citing threats to his life, as well as the theft of his truck and $35,000 US, obviously, from their joint bank accounts. Um, it's tricky when we're dealing with marital ones, right? According to Charles's filing, Lori had told him that he was possessed by a dark spirit called Ned Snyder. So remember I talked about the light and the dark? He is
Mhm.
now dark. Okay. Not yet a zombie, I don't think, but he is dark. So that she was a god assigned to carry out the work of the 144,000 at Christ's second coming, which would happen in July of 2020, and that she would murder him if he got in the way of her mission because he's dark. Charles sought a protective order against Lori at the advice of his attorney. He withdrew the petition 1 month later, saying he wanted to try to make the marriage work. Sir, no.
Mhm.
The man and woman is talking about, I am on a mission to lead 144,000 people for the second coming, and you're dark and your name is Ned Snyder. All bets are off. All bets are off.
Huh.
Um, Nevertheless, Charles had become so worried by Lori's actions that in February 2019, he changed his $1 million life insurance policy so that the beneficiary would be his sister Kay rather than his wife. Lori was unaware of this until after Charles's death. Let me tell you, she was pissed when she found that out. Because remember, we talked about it before, she would kill people with also the advantage of being able to get life insurance payouts or the children's social security payouts. So when he did this, she clearly got nothing and she was pissed. Okay. Arizona police detectives later retrieved text messages between Chad, Lori, and her brother Alex, which referred to Charles as Ned or Hiplos, the names of the spirit said to possess him. Lori told members of her religious group that her husband had become a zombie. Several followers repeatedly joined to pray for Charles's demise.
Mhm.
Sick. Having
Mhm.
discovered his wife's affair with Chad Daybell, Charles Vallow confronted Lori about it. Also, he will talk to Tammy. We'll talk about that right now. 11 days before his death, he sent an email to Tammy Daybell, that is Chad's wife, to inform her that their spouses were cheating with each other. Evidence later showed that Tammy had opened and then deleted the message and blocked Charles's email address. I don't know if she knew something. I don't know if she thought this man is crazy. I don't know what she thought.
Mm.
But hindsight being 2020, you wish that she heard him and got away from him.
All right.
It's sad. But
Yeah.
um, on July 1st, 2019, Charles informed Lori that he planned to meet Tammy in person. At that point, Lori and Chad were communicating constantly with burner phones. And they're probably just going to chalk this up as he's a zombie. So,
Hmm.
get rid of him. On
Yep.
July 11th, 2019, Charles went to pick up JJ at Lori's home in Chandler, Arizona, early in the morning. Alex was present. An altercation occurred, and Alex shot and then killed Charles. Tylee told police that she had grabbed a baseball bat after she heard from her room Charles, Lori, and Alex arguing that Charles had taken the bat away from her and that
Mm.
she had then run away from the house with JJ before the shooting had happened. We do not
Mm.
know if the children actually witnessed anything. Well, we'll trust Tylee here, but what I will say too about Tylee, if anyone knows, like obviously these children did not deserve this, but Tylee was somewhat manipulated by her mother
Mm.
and believed a lot of things that her mother told her. I don't know if she was aware of the light and the dark and the zombie and that kind of thing. I don't know if she knew any of that part. But when it came to Charles, she believed that Charles was the bad guy in this situation, and he probably was not. Um, we'll kind of get into the theory. If they don't get here, I'll talk about it. Um,
Mm.
so where am I here? Alex claimed self-defense, alleging that he had retrieved his gun after Charles struck him on the head with the bat. Lori did not call 911. It was later determined that Alex had called it about 45 minutes after Charles was killed. So wouldn't you think if you kill someone in self-defense or by accident, you wouldn't call 911 right away, not 45 minutes later? Moments after the shooting, Lori took JJ to school and stopped on her way at Burger King, then at Walgreens to buy flip-flops. Something tells me she's stalling. No charges were pressed. A police detective later testified that Lori's behavior that day had been oddly nonchalant. Girl was laughing, making jokes, saying, "Oh, our neighbors are going to be so upset. Hi, neighbor." Like, it's all in the body cam footage if you want to see it. It's really weird. And as she seemed unaffected by the situation. Zulema said that Alex had told her he did not feel bad because he had killed a zombie, which is what they were told they're supposed to do. Investigations later showed that 2 days before the shooting, Lori had sent her brother a text message which told him to be like Nephi. Police interpreted that message as a command to kill a wicked man. Lori texts Charles's son, so from a previous marriage, so not her child, but text him, not even call him, not say, "Hey,
Mm.
can you come over? I need to talk to you." No, no. She texts him and says, "Oh, by the way, your father passed away." Not your
Mm.
father was shot. Not your father was killed. Because let's face the facts, he was murdered. None of that. Just, he's passed away. That's how his children found out that their father was dead.
Mm.
And then left them without any further information for 3 more days. Charles's son had to find out on their own, the mortuary where their father's body was. They were left to organize a memorial service, which Lori did not attend. I think that's probably for the best. Before Charles's death, his attorney stated he had been primarily concerned for JJ's safety and well-being, as the boy needed a consistent routine due to his special needs and being autistic. Charles was also concerned for Tylee, but he was unable to include her in the filings as she was neither his biological daughter, nor had he filed to legally adopt her.
Mm.
Um, Days after Charles was killed, Chad sent Lori a love story in the form of a series of text messages. The story, which investigators called a romance novel, told the meaning of James and Elena, the names Chad substituted for himself and Lori, and gave a detailed description of their sexual relationship. Gross. Like, if you see a picture of Chad Daybell, I don't get it. I don't
Right.
understand. Disgusting. Anyways,
Mm.
now we're going to move on to the disappearances of Tylee and JJ. So just trigger warning, because we are dealing with children. This tough.
Mm.
By the end of August, Lori relocated to Rexburg, Idaho with her children. Alex, the brother, also moved there because, of course, he did. Just
Mm.
before moving to Idaho, Lori sold JJ's service dog. Now, JJ had a service dog. this was, a dog to help him with regulating his autism. I'm sure probably has some form of anxiety as well. Like this is what this dog was for. This dog
Mm,
was very important and a staple in the family. And she went
mm,
and sold the dog. Not sure if he was already gone at this point, but it was suspected that if he wasn't dead yet,
mhm,
she was preparing for that. It
mm.
just all seemed very odd.
All right.
While Lori and her children resided in Rexburg, neighbors noticed JJ's erratic behavior as Lori often left him outside without adult supervision for long periods of time. To me, too, that dog also probably helping regulate his emotions, and now him being left on his own, he's probably so confused and not able to regulate himself, and his brain's going mal a minute because he was, I believe, nonverbal or something. I don't know if he was nonverbal. I think he was partially nonverbal. But anyways, he is probably just so confused and lost. And for what's about to come, it really feels like Lori and or Chad really set this up for it to
Mm,
go in the favor that they wanted.
all right.
Because if you saw what happened with Charles, let's just say a pattern is going to repeat itself with the kids too.
Mm,
Um, so when confronted about this, Lori did not mention that JJ was autistic, but told neighbors that he was her niece's drug baby, which
mm,
is true. He was someone else's child
mhm,
biologically.
mhm.
And yes, he was born under the influence of drugs, but he is autistic. He is your child, legally speaking. And you're just going to be like, he's, uh, he's just a drug baby. Aren't sick human. Um, Tylee was last seen on September 8th, 2019 at Yellowstone National Park with her brother JJ and her mother Lori and her uncle Alex. She was never enrolled at any school in Idaho, even though her mother had claimed she was attending BYU in Idaho. The rumor has it that while there, Alex Alex killed her.
Mhm.
But we don't know for sure, or if it was like around that time. But there are photos of all of them at Yellowstone. Um, and those were the last photos that were taken of her and the last time anyone saw her. So that's the
Mm,
rumor. We don't know that for sure.
okay.
Um, JJ last attended Rexburg's Kennedy Elementary School on September 20th. On September 22nd, Melanie Gibb and her boyfriend David Warwick were staying at Lori's home. Around 10:30 p.m., Warwick saw Alex take JJ, who was sleeping, upstairs to his bedroom. This was JJ's last confirmed sighting. On the next morning, JJ was absent. Lori told Gibb and Warwick that JJ had been misbehaving, so his uncle had picked him up. More on that later. On September 23rd, JJ had an unexcused absence from school. The next day, Lori informed Rexburg Elementary School that she would now be homeschooling JJ, so she unenrolled him from school. In the months that followed her children's disappearances, Lori kept collecting the Social Security survivor benefits that each received after the death of their respective fathers. In October 2019, two Venmo payments were made from Tylee's account to her older half-brother Colby, with love expressing messages attached. When Colby later expressed concern towards Tylee via text, he received responses from her cell phone indicating she was safe, but too busy to talk. After repeated calls to Tylee went unanswered, Colby became more worried. Brandon Bruto and Melanie Gibb later said that Lori and Chad were convinced Tylee and JJ were possessed and had become zombies. Zulema testified that Chad had told his followers that JJ would die soon, only to come back as Colby's son. God. The FBI
Mhm.
uncovered text messages in which Lori and Chad discussed Tylee and JJ's possession and mentioned a perfectly orchestrated plan to take the children. A text exchange between Lori and Alex mentioned working on Z's, referring to zombies.
Huh.
So, in case you're not following, they did believe that both of her children were uh not just dark, but zombies.
Mm,
Yeah. On
mm,
October 2nd, 2019, Brandon Boudreaux, the estranged husband of Lori's niece Melanie, okay, was shot at from a Jeep while driving home in Gilbert, Arizona. The bullet missed Boudreaux's head by inches. Boudreaux, who had been close to Charles and Lori Vallow's family, recognized the Jeep as a vehicle used by Tylee. The Jeep drove away, but Boudreaux could give its license plate number to the police, who identified it as being registered to Charles Vallow. Melanie had become very involved with her aunt's religious activities during 2018 and had insisted that she and her husband buy food stockpiles for the end of the world. During the summer of 2019, she had demanded a divorce, which was not yet finalized when Boudreaux was shot at. Boudreaux said that he had been blindsided by the divorce request, which he blamed on Melanie's involvement in her aunt's cult, because let's face it, this is a cult. Boudreaux, who suspected Lori and her brother Alex of Charles's killing, hired a private investigator. After it became known that Tylee and JJ were missing, Boudreaux was convinced that Charles's death, the children's disappearance, and the attempt on his life were all connected to Lori's religious group. He suspected that the murder attempt against him was motivated by his life insurance policy. In February 2020, Boudreaux filed a court document claiming that the attempt on his life was motivated by insurance money, that the gunman was probably Lori's recently deceased brother, Alex, and that Melanie was likely aware of Tylee and JJ's whereabouts. Melanie denied any knowledge of what had happened to the children. Don't buy it.
mm,
By tracking Alex's cell phone data, investigators later found that Alex had searched on the internet for directions to Boudreaux's address and had been present near Boudreaux's home during the hours before the shooting. He had also searched how to load ammunition, ballistic trajectory calculators, and after the shooting, man shot in Gilbert.
mm,
Not that I want criminals to be knowledgeable, stay stupid, but in today's world, in the
mhm,
year 2026, how do we not yet know that making searches like that ain't gonna come up in a police investigation? Are we stupid? We are stupid as a human race. Like, honestly.
mm,
But stay stupid, please.
right.
Don't take what I'm saying. Please keep
Mhm,
doing it. Um, so on the day of the shooting, Alex and Lori had communicated several times. Later on, Lori had also made internet searches about a shooting in Gilbert, Arizona. So now we're going to move on to the murder of Tammy Daybell, Chad's wife. In February 2019, Chad told his neighbors, Todd and Alice Gilbert, that he had had a vision that Tammy would die before her 50th birthday. Hmm. On October 9th, 2019, Tammy reported being shot at in her driveway by a masked man with what she thought was a paintball gun. Oh, that's going to do damage.
right.
The
Mm,
man pulled the trigger several times, but the gun was apparently unloaded. Police believed this to be a prank and could not identify the man. This is what they believed. I'm going to tell you right now, it's probably Alex
mhm,
Cox, but who knows for sure? We don't know that for sure. 10 days later, Tammy was found dead in her home, apparently from natural causes. Chad claimed that she had retired the previous night with a terrible cough and died in her sleep. Jesus. That you just have a and then you died. You're dead.
mm,
Lord. Jesus. Lord. Okay. Um, he said that Tammy had been experiencing low blood pressure, seizures, and negative reactions with homeopathic medicines, though nothing in her medical record supported this. Tammy's funeral was organized in Utah 3 days after her death. Alice Gilbert later said that she had been surprised that the funeral came so soon and felt like it had been planned as if maybe someone was planning the funeral before one's death. The Gilberts also testified that unlike his children, Chad did not seem devastated and acted in a businesslike manner. Chad's sister-in-law, Heather Daybell, said that Chad's behavior at Tammy's funeral did not ring true and that he just didn't seem upset. Jason Gwillem said that he felt Chad was not crying, but trying to cry. So faking. During the service, Chad mentioned in his talk that Tammy suffered from depression. So, like during this talk, the eulogy for his wife, he mentioned during his eulogy to his wife that she suffered from depression and commented that she was not easy to live with, and
Mm.
she also called her lazy.
Right.
What is just great words to say about your now deceased wife, who you're supposed to love. Again, stay stupid. According to police reports, Chad Daybell received life insurance payouts after Tammy's death, totaling $430,000. So that's about $529,000 in 2024, but whatever, doesn't matter. Um, Tammy's body was not autopsied initially due to Chad's refusal,
Mhm.
and which is like, okay, so then if you're going to refuse an autopsy, which I don't see how the husband can refuse an autopsy, but whatever.
Mhm.
Refuse the autopsy. So then why didn't you cremate her? So then they really can't do an autopsy after that. Instead, you didn't. You just buried her. So again, what a dummy. Um, but again, thank you for being dumb. Um, However, after Tammy's body was exhumed and autopsied, it was determined that she had been asphyxiated. So either she was choked or she had like a pillow over her face, something like that, like around those lines.
Mm.
Um, so clearly all things that was not natural. The autopsy results completed by February 2021 were not publicly revealed until April of 2023 during Lori's trial.
Mm.
Investigators later uncovered text messages between Chad and Lori claiming that Tammy was in limbo and possessed by a spirit named Viola. What a pretty name. At some point, Chad and Lori told their followers that Tammy had become a zombie. So she went from being in limbo to a
Mhm.
zombie. She didn't even meet the dark side. Jeez.
Mm.
Okay. So Alex's phone was located near the Daybell's residence on October 9th, 4 hours before Tammy was shot at. Remember what I said? That as
Mhm.
if Alex was likely the one doing it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It pinged
Mm.
again in the same area 10 days later, on the night Tammy died. Hmm.
Mm.
Police found at Alex's home an AR-15 that resembled the description Tammy had made of the supposed paintball gun. So it actually wasn't a paintball gun, but she thought it was. Alex had made several internet searches about the use of an AR-15 and how a Grendel round would where am I? Grendel round would impact a Dodge Dakota, which was the car the Daybells owned. Again, just making stupid searches. Prosecutors later said the paintball gun spotted by Tammy on October 9th was actually a real gun, but they are 15, that may have jammed or misfired, and that the shooter was probably Alex. Zulema testified that she had been with Lori and her niece Melanie to do a casting on the night Tammy was attacked in her driveway. At some point during that night, Lori talked with someone on the phone and became very angry, calling the other person, quote, idiot, moron, stupid. After hanging up, she commented, idiot can't do anything by himself. Who do you think she was talking to? Had to have been Alex.
Mm.
Because again, it just goes to show, like, he was her lapdog and she just took advantage of him. Like, I don't feel bad for Alex Cox by any means, but I feel bad in a sense where this guy was force-fed information that he thought was true, was for the betterment of the world and all of this, and
Mhm.
all of it was a crock of shit. Um, I don't know if it's gonna be mentioned here, but from what I understand from Zulema is he kinda started to have this realization of, "Am I actually, like, murdering people. Like, he's starting to realize that, oh, I think I'm in deep. Like, something is
Mm.
off. But by then he died. So after that. But anyways.
Mm.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to Chad and Lori's marriage now
Okay.
and them fleeing. So everyone's dead now
Okay.
for Alex. So here we go. Chad introduced Lori to his children the day after Tammy's funeral. 1 week after Tammy's death, he also told Todd and Alice Gilbert that he had found the woman he would marry. Okay. Days later, Chad brought Lori to meet the Gilberts. Alice Gilbert described the situation as awkward, with Chad and Lori laughing and giggling and being very affectionate to each other, more than Gilbert has seen Chad be with Tammy. Chad also mentioned that Lori recently had a daughter who had passed away.
Mm.
So if we are following here, they're saying her daughter passed away, but as far as the world thinks, she's alive and thriving in college
Mm.
or university. I think she was in BYU, or
Right.
she was supposed to be at BYU. So what? She didn't have any other daughters, it was just her.
Mm.
Um, anyways, Chad told Tammy's sister, Samantha Gwillem, that Tammy's spirit had appeared to him at the cemetery and advised him to move on. It's fine, move on.
Wow.
He also told Samantha that he and Lori had bonded over their recently dead spouses and that Lori had no children, so they would be empty nesters.
Mm.
Okay. She has technically 3 children. One is older, but nonetheless, she does have a child,
Mhm.
at least one child that's alive. You're supposed to have 3 alive children. What do you mean you have no children? What do you mean you're an empty nester?
Mm.
And to a few days before, you're saying your daughter died. No one who loses a child says, I have no children. I'm an empty nester. You're going to say, I'm a mother, but this happened. Like,
Mm. Yeah.
next
Wow.
thing. Chad and Lori were married in Hawaii on November 5th, 2019, 2 weeks after the death of Tammy, and 2 months after Tylee and JJ, who were still missing, were murdered. They were murdered, but at this point in time, they were just missing. Apart from his children, Chad did not inform his family beforehand. Chad's mother discovered that he and Lori were married upon meeting Lori. Investigators later found in Lori's internet history that she had ordered a pair of wedding rings in August of 2019. This would have been several months before Tammy's death, and that she had searched for wedding dresses on the day of Tammy's burial.
Mm.
On November 26th, police visited Lori's townhouse in Rexburg for a welfare check on JJ at the request of his grandmother, Kay Woodcock. A police detective initially found Chad and Alex at Lori's home. Both men acted suspiciously, with Alex not knowing that it was Kay who had requested the welfare check, claiming that JJ was with his grandmother, and Chad, whom the detective knew was married to Lori, said that that he was a friend of Alex and that he hardly knew Lori. So just to keep this up, the police are going to do a welfare on JJ because their grandmother has requested this. Alex, like a dumbass, says, oh, he's with his grandmother. No, he's not. Then you have Chad saying, oh, I'm just friends with this guy. I don't know Lori. But he's married to Lori. And they knew he was married to Lori.
Mm.
Okay. Police later reached Lori, who claimed that JJ was in Arizona with her friend Melanie Gibb. However, I do want to preface, Melanie Gibb is out by this point, or she will be out at this point, out of the whole situation. And she does come through with this a little bit.
Mm.
So when contacted by the police, Gibb stated that JJ had not been with her for several months. That night, a neighbor observed Lori and Alex packing a truck outside her home. The following day, when the police and FBI arrived to search the house, it was abandoned. Chad's home was also searched by investigators. Lori and Chad returned to Hawaii, where they resided in a gated community in Princeville on the island of Kauai, living off the money Chad had received from Tammy's life insurance. While searching for a home in Hawaii, Chad had written in an application that the couple had no children.
Huh.
Okay. Now, this is when it starts to hit the fan. This is when the story hit media. This is when everything's gonna come colliding. Prosecutors in Idaho became involved in the case when police requested a warrant for locating the Jeep from which Brandon Boudreaux had been shot at in Arizona. On December 6, 2019, Melanie Gibb contacted the police, revealing that both Lori and Chad had called her separately on November 26th and had asked her to tell police that JJ was with her. Police efforts to locate JJ led to the discovery that Tylee was also missing. A connection was made between the investigations in Idaho and those in Arizona. Law enforcement agencies intensified their inquiries about the children's whereabouts, as well as Chad and Lori's departure from Idaho. It was also decided to further investigate Tammy's death. Her body was exhumed for an autopsy on December 11th.
Huh.
On December 20th, the Rexburg Police Department announced that the children were officially missing and asked the public's assistance in locating them. Investigators expressed concern for the children's safety, asserting that they were not with Chad and Lori, and that Lori had refused to cooperate with the investigation, opting to leave the state with Chad instead. Police also announced that the children's disappearance could be linked to Tammy Daybell's suspicious death. The next day, police said Lori and Chad were persons of interest.
Huh.
The case soon received national coverage, with family and friends describing Chad and Lori's cult-like beliefs in interviews and on social media posts. On December 23rd, 2019, the Daybells released statements through a Rexburg attorney who said that Chad Daybell was a loving husband and he was in support of his children in this matter, or he has the support of his children in this matter. Adding the children he said he didn't have, and adding that
Huh.
Lori was a devoted mother who resents assertions to the contrary, and that the allegations would be addressed once they have moved beyond speculation and rumor. The same woman who said that she didn't have any kids, but I digress. Colby, who JJ's grandparents Larry and Kay Woodcock and Chad's brother Matt Daybell, issued messages asking Lori and Chad to return the children. On January 7th, 2020, the Woodcocks held a press conference in Rexburg offering a $20,000 reward for the children's return or any information leading to them. On January 25th, 2020, after Lori and Chad were located in Kauai, law enforcement agents served them with a court order requiring Lori to physically produce within 5 days. So this is that time deadline that I was saying. Tylee and JJ to the Idaho Department of Welfare or to the Rexburg Police Department. The
Huh.
next day, police seized the couple's rental car and searched their rental townhome in Princeville in Hawaii, where they found Tylee's debit card and JJ's iPad. Also on January 26th, the Daybells were confronted over the children's disappearance by East Idaho News reporter Nate Eaton. They refused to answer questions. And
Huh.
again, this is something that you can watch. We all know her walking with her sunglasses and not saying anything or saying no comment or whatever. And it's both of them are there. It's just,
Huh.
it's freaking disgusting. But anyways,
Yeah.
in February 2020, authorities focused on a storage locker in Rexburg that had been rented by Lori in October 2019. They discovered belongings linked to Tylee and JJ, including clothing, bikes, and photographs. These items had been left behind when Lori abruptly left Rexburg in late November 2019. Video footage captured Lori and Alex moving items to and from this locker before her departure. Now, we're quickly going to talk about the death of Alex. On November 24th, 2019, Chad Daybell gave Alex a patriarchal blessing, which he had no standing to give in the LDS church because he's not even a part of that church, saying that Alex had assisted him and Lori in ways that can never be repaid. Chad called Alex a prophet and a hero and predicted he would have a future as a messenger of the Lord. The recording of this blessing was later found by investigators on Lori's iCloud account. Alex then died on December 12, 2019. His death was attributed to blood clots and high blood pressure. However, the day before his death, Alex had been informed by Lori and Chad that Tammy Daybell's body was going to be exhumed.
Uh-huh.
Zulema later testified that Alex had told her he was worried about being Lori and Chad's fall guy. So he could have maybe done something to himself.
Right.
He could have been told to do something to himself. Who knows? But I don't think it's as natural of a death
Mm-hmm.
as maybe people want to think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we're getting on to the arrests, to the fun part. So first, Lori's arrest, because she was arrested first. On February 20th, 2020, Lori was arrested in Hawaii by the Kauai Police Department. On March 5th, she was extradited back to Idaho. Lori faced charges in Madison County, Idaho, including 2 felony counts of desertion and non-supportive dependent children, as well as 3 misdemeanors. Her bail was initially set at $5 million, but was there later lowered to $1 million after extradition to Idaho. In May, Lori appeared in court in Rexburg to request a further reduction of her bail, which was denied. Good. Multiple local bond companies were reportedly unwilling to work with her. Good. After Lori's arrest, Chad returned to Idaho. He tried to convince the Gilberts to put their home up for bond to get Lori out of prison, which, what the hell?
Huh.
Claiming that Jesus had given him this idea. Well, I'm sure Jesus told you that.
Huh.
Jesus is busy. He don't have time for this. Anyways, let's move on. And when Alice Gilbert asked him about the children and confronted him on what he had said about Lori's daughter being dead, Chad answered that it was a custody issue. He added at some point that Tylee didn't like people and did not like him using the past tense. So basically saying, she didn't like me,
Huh.
not she doesn't like me. Past tense. Okay. So now we're going to go into, because again, Chad's not yet arrested. So we just
Mhm.
had Lori's arrest. Now we're going into the discovery of the children and then
Mhm.
Chad's arrest. So on June 9th, police found human remains buried in unmarked graves in the backyard of Chad's home during a search of the premise. Tylee's remains were located in an area the Daybell family called the Pet Cemetery, as it had been used to bury their cats and dogs.
Huh.
JJ's remains were located in a separate area of the property near a pond. As the property was being searched, Chad phoned Lori in jail to warn her about the situation. After police found and began to unearth the bodies, he tried to drive off from the scene, but was chased down and apprehended. What a dummy. He
Huh.
was arrested for obstruction or concealment of evidence. The next day, his bail was set at $1 million. Authorities had decided to search Daybell's property after tracking Alex's cell phone. On September 9th, 2019, the day after Tylee's last verifiable sighting, Alex's phone had pinged in the middle of the night at Lori's home, then in the morning at Daybell's home. In the morning of September 23rd, the day after JJ was last seen, Alex's phone had again pinged at the Daybell property. The FBI also intercepted a September 9th text conversation between Chad and his wife. Chad told Tammy he had shot a large raccoon after finding it in their backyard that morning and buried it in their quote unquote pet cemetery.
Huh.
That's a, I'm sorry, that has to be a big ass friggin' raccoon, okay? It's
Yeah.
a whole ass 16-year-old girl because she was the one that was put there. Investigators found that suspicious, as raccoons are normally nocturnal animals. Doy. We all
Huh.
know this.
Huh.
On June 10th, the Woodcock and Ryan families confirmed that the human remains found on Chad's property were those of Tylee and JJ. This finding was officially confirmed by Rexburg police 3 days later. Tylee's body was burned, her hands had been cut off, and her bones were fractured in several places, from which forensic examiners deduced that someone had attempted to dismember her. JJ's body was wrapped in plastic. Unlike Tylee, he had been buried with great care under rocks and wooden planks. It was determined that JJ had been struggling to say the word, asphyxiated
Huh.
with a plastic bag and duct tape over his mouth. Due to the state of her remains, Tylee's cause of death could not be determined and was ruled a homicide by unspecified means.
Huh.
Tylee's DNA was found on a pickaxe and a shovel seized at Chad's home. Alex's fingerprints and Lori's hair were found on the plastic and duct tape on JJ's remains. So that shows that Lori's hair being there she was involved,
Uh,
at least in JJ's stuff. In August, Chad Daybell was excommunicated by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on a basis of his religious teachings, which the media has later described as a doomsday cult, which I think we said that before. So on July 2nd, 2020, prosecutors dropped 2 charges against Lori related to desertion and non-support of dependent children, and instead charged her with obstruction or concealment of evidence regarding her children's remains. On July 17th, in light of the 2 felony counts against Lori having been dropped, her bond was lowered by Madison County Judge Michelle Mallard. The bond was set at $50,000 for each charge, totaling $150,000. Why?
uh,
Anyways, it was further noted that Chad would still need to post a $1 million in Fremont County to be released from jail. Something I'm gonna guess he doesn't have. On May 25th, 2021, Chad and Lori were indicted on charges of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder for the deaths of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy, as well as grand theft by deception regarding the children. Lori was also charged with grand theft related to her children's Social Security survivor benefits. Chad faced an insurance fraud charge related to Tammy's life insurance policy. In June 2021, Lori was indicted by a grand jury in Maricopa County, Arizona, on 1 count of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder for the death of Charles Vallow. Police documents read, quote, "The evidence shows that Charles's death was a planned event and necessary to prevent Charles and others from confronting Lori about her extreme religious beliefs when he came to town. The death of Charles Vallow was also necessary in order for Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow to marry and fulfill the religious prophecy. You could have just divorced him." In July 2021, prosecutors in Maricopa County decided not to prosecute Chad Daybell in connection with the death of Charles Vallow, citing
uh,
no reasonable likelihood of conviction, which I think he could have definitely facilitated in the sense of, oh, he's dark, because he was
right.
the main decision maker on who was white, who was dark, who was zombie. So he could have done that, but
Uh-huh.
unless he actually said the words, oh, yeah, you need to get that done, that's not, it's really hard to charge someone for that. I personally think he's connected in some way, but I do agree it would have been very difficult to charge him with the death of Charles Vallow.
Mm,
Um, so in September 2021, Chad Daybell's children issued a statement defending their father's innocence and claiming he had been fooled in the worst, most deadly way possible by Lori Vallow. I get he's your dad, but your dad was having this doomsday thought process before he met Lori. And
uh,
he seemed to have been really deep in that before he met Lori. Now, I don't think Lori is innocent. I think she definitely had her own thought process and she may have manipulated certain things by being, she is an attractive woman. She, not so much now, but she was an attractive woman. She, it's probably desirable in some way for men. So maybe that part, but like, I think they truly came together and became the monsters that they were. I don't think one was leading the other.
mm,
Um, in 2022, Lori was indicted by a grand jury on 1 count of first-degree premeditated murder related to claims that she conspired with her brother to kill Brandon Boudreaux. Prosecutors said that Lori hoped to access Boudreaux's money through her niece. Now, for the trials, we're getting there. We're getting to the end. A jury trial for the Madison County charges against Lori was initially set for January 25th to 29th, 2021. On May 27th, 2021, Lori was found incompetent and unfit to stand trial, and her case was stayed. Doesn't mean she's getting out of prison, but they need to assess her. In December 2021, Lori's attorney, Mark Means, was disqualified from the case because his representation of both Lori and Chad created a conflict. Yeah,
uh,
duh. Come on. You're a
uh,
lawyer, you know this. On April 11th, 2022, Lori was deemed competent to stand trial after mental health treatment. On October 6th, 2022, after Lori's new defense team filed several motions, Judge
uh-huh.
Stephen W. Boyce issued an order indicating the case was suspended until her competency to stand trial could be determined. On November 16th, she was once again found competent. Lori and Chad both pleaded not guilty to all charges in Idaho. Their cases were split in March 2023 at Chad's request. Better, yeah, separate them because maybe you'll have a better outcome.
Right.
The reasons were that Chad had waived his right to a speedy trial, and his attorneys said they needed more time to review DNA evidence. Chad's attorneys also cited the mutually and hold on, the
Uh-huh.
antagonistic, there we go, nature
Uh,
of the defendant's positions. Since Lori had not waived her right to a swift trial, the court ruled that her case would proceed as planned. So, first Lori's. In March 21st, 2023, the judge removed the death penalty from Lori due to newly uncovered DNA evidence discovered too close to the trial to be tested and admitted into court. Damn.
uh,
Lori's trial began on April 3rd, 2023, in the Ada County Courthouse in Boise, Idaho. She did not testify in her own defense. Her lawyers did not call any witnesses, while the prosecution called about 60 people to testify.
wow.
It feels like their defense was just never going to happen. What the hell is this? Anyways, on
Uh,
April
uh,
15th, pictures of the children's corpses were shown to jurors and an audience. Lori asked to be excused from court that day. This was denied. Good, as a defendant in a felony case must be present at all significant proceedings. You don't get to run away from the corpses of your children. You
uh,
created it. Sit there and watch.
uh,
Hope you're freaking haunted by them.
uh,
Melanie Gibb, Audrey Barrettitro, whoever
uh,
that is, who was a former friend of Lori who had also participated in her religious group, and Ian Pawlowski, husband of Lori's niece Melanie, her new husband, testified about Lori's beliefs and her claims that she could cast out Satan and other evil spirits. Barrettitro said that when she grew uncomfortable about Lori's beliefs and decided to dissolve their friendship, Lori threatened to murder her and dispose of her body in trash bags. Because how dare you leave a cult?
uh,
In the light of the evidence that pointed to Alex's direct involvement in the murders, prosecutors stated that Lori Vallow Daybell had groomed and manipulated her brother to participate in her crimes. Lori's sister, Summer Shiflett, testified that Alex had suffered brain damage in a car accident and that his decision-making was stuck at a teenage level. Zulema said, again, that was his wife, said that Alex was entirely under the influence of Chad and Lori, who had convinced him that he was a reincarnated warrior of God and that the only reason he had come to Earth was to protect Lori. During the closing arguments, Lori's attorney, Jim Archibald, depicted her as being under Chad Daybell's psychological control. Prosecutor Rob Wood summed up the evidence that showed Lori had participated to the conspiracy to commit all three murders and reminded how Lori had never reported that her children were missing and had lied to multiple people about their whereabouts. On May 12th, 2023, Lori was found guilty of all criminal charges. On July 31st, 2023, she received 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole for respectively the murder of Tylee, the murder of JJ, and the conspiracy to commit murder charge of Tammy, in addition to fines and restitution for the grand theft charges. Judge
uh,
Boyce said that Lori had murdered her children to remove them as obstacles and to profit financially by choosing the most evil and destructive path possible and going down a bizarre religious rabbit hole to justify their killings. Before her sentencing, Lori made her first public statement since her arrest. She said that she had been speaking to Jesus as well as to her children and to Tammy, and that Tylee, JJ, and Tammy were happy and extremely busy in heaven. She also stated, Jesus Christ knows that no one was murdered in this case. Accidental deaths happen, suicides happen, fatal side effects from medications happen. You, you crazy. Sorry. When you're
uh,
talking about killing your children and
uh,
saying, accidents happen, go yourself.
yeah.
An alternate juror during Lori's trial described Lori as a monster. I would say
Uh-huh.
that is accurate. After seeing graphic photos of Tylee and JJ, as well as Lori and Chad's Hawaii wedding photos after them murdering the children. On May 30th, 2025, Lori's attorney filed a notice of appeal for her 2023 conviction, demanding a new trial, which is her right to do. Now, Chad's. On November 9th, 2023, Chad's legal team filed 3 motions to remove the death penalty in his murder trial. The final motion stated that Lori had manipulated Chad through emotional and sexual control, women, and that Chad had lesser culpability than his co-defendant, who did not face the death penalty. The motions were denied in December of 2023.
Huh.
Chad Daybell's trial opened on April 10th, 2024. In his opening statement, prosecutor Wood depicted him as a man motivated by sex, money, and power, and craving for significance, who saw his spouse and Lori's children as obstacles to his rightful destiny. Chad's attorney, John Pryor, painted him as a religious man who had been lured into adultery by Lori Vallow. His statement also focused on Alex's history of violence and his role on as Lori's protector. On May 16th, Chad's defense team filed a motion for acquittal after it appeared that an amended indictment had incorrectly listed J.J. Ballow's death as having occurred between September 8th or 9th, 2019, instead of September 22nd or 23rd, clearly confusing that with Tylee's death. Judge Boyce ruled that this clerical error was not a ground for acquittal. Doi. 2 of Chad's children, Emma and Garth, testified in their father's defense and said their mother had been experiencing health problems and was getting tired extremely easily. Hey, kids, here's a thought. Maybe he was drugging her.
Hmm.
Just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
On the contrary, 3 former colleagues of Tammy Daybell said that she seemed healthy and energetic up until the day before her death. Tammy's sister also testified that Tammy had seemed fine when she visited her on October 14th, 2019.
Hmm.
Chad did not take the stand. Probably smart. During the closing arguments, prosecutor Lindsay Blake summarized the evidence that pointed to Chad's crucial role in coordinating and giving a religious justification to these murders. Prior, the defense attorney, painted Lori and Alex as the true culprits, saying that Lori had been motivated by greed, that she had manipulated Chad all along, and that Chad would likely have been her next victim.
Huh.
Okay. On May 30th, 2024, the jury found Chad Daybell guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy in the deaths of Tammy, Tylee, and JJ. He was also found guilty of grand theft by deception related to the children's killings and of insurance fraud related to Tammy's. It was confirmed that the prosecution would seek the death penalty for Chad. At the sentencing hearing, Chad chose not to present any mitigation evidence. On June 1st, 2024, he was sentenced to death. For the insurance fraud charges, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison, each to run concurrent to death and to the restitution of $130,000 plus $300,000. Since Chad had been deemed indigent, I think that's the right word to say. Basically, he has no money. No fines were added to the insurance fraud sentence. Tammy Daybell's extended family, Matt and Heather Daybell, as well as Boudreaux, Alex, and Shiflett families issued statements expressing their relief at the end of Idaho trials and their thoughts of the victims. The trials are over, but motions are going to happen, appeals are going to happen, especially for Chad. They're pretty much automatic because he's been sentenced to death. It's going to go on till forever, till he runs out of his appeals. Chad was put on death row at Idaho Maximum Security Institution. On June 5th, 2024, Chad's attorneys filed notice of appeal to Idaho Supreme Court asking them to review verdict and death penalty sentence. So, looks like Lori had multiple trials in Arizona because it's like tribunals. So let's see. In November 2023, Lori was extradited to Arizona to face her 2 conspiracy charges there. She pleaded not guilty to both. In February 2024, her trial was scheduled to begin on August 1st of the same year, though the judge mentioned that it might be moved at a later date due to the amount of evidence to process. In June, Lori's defense team in Arizona filed a motion requesting a delay for the trial. Lori objected and continued to assert her right to a speedy trial. On July 2nd, the lawyer's request was granted and the trial date was moved to February 24th, 2025. In October 2024, Colby posted on his YouTube channel the recording of a telephone conversation he had had with his mother from her prison. During their exchange, Lori claimed that she received higher knowledge directly from Jesus and was on a divine mission, said that Tylee and JJ had visited her in spirit and suggested that Tylee had accidentally killed JJ. Okay. And then taken her own life in remorse. Very Chris Watts of her. Um, Colby commented that his mother was beyond deceived or delusional. My thought, but also in October 2024, Lori's attorneys made a request for a competency hearing. 1 week later, she requested to waive her right to counsel and act as her own attorney. Okay. At a December 5th, 2024 hearing, Lori was deemed by a doctor to be mentally fit and competent to stand trial. Judge Justin Biersky also granted Lori's request to represent herself. Lori said at the hearing that she had real trial experience. Where? When? God, at least Bundy had some, like not trial experience, but some knowledge. God. Okay. And had been studying case law since her incarceration. The court decided that the Charles Vallow case and the Brandon Boudreaux case would be tried separately. The judge moved again the trial date for the Charles Vallow conspiracy case, this time to March 31st, 2025. The trial over the murder attempt on Brandon Boudreaux was eventually scheduled to begin in late May. On March 7th, 2025, Dateline NBC aired Lori's first ever media interview. Ugh. During a because listen, who she's about to have a combative exchange with, I'm going to throw hands. Okay, but during a combative exchange with Keith Morrison, better step down, she maintained her innocence, tried again to pin JJ's death on Tylee, and claimed that Jesus has shown her that she and Chad would be exonerated. He's not exonerated now. And released from prison in the future. She told Morrison that she might go on Dancing with the Stars after her release because, I mean, they did it with Anna Delvey. Why not? Big person. In both Arizona trials, members of the jury had to be unaware of Lori and her previous convictions. So the Charles Vallow case, which I believe was first, Lori's trial over Charles's death began on March 31st with jury selection. Lori told jurors that her role was to protect her from the state. On April 7th, during her opening statement, Lori maintained that Alex had shot Charles in self-defense and announced that she would provide proof of this. She used the phrase, "the evidence will show," over 70 freaking times during her statement. The prosecution said that Lori had conspired to murder Charles so she could access his life insurance policy, which she couldn't do anymore, and marry Chad. That Alex had staged the home to make it look like Charles had attacked him, because again, he had 45 minutes to do so. And Lori, to attack him and Lori, and that there was no evidence Alex had been hit with a baseball bat like he had claimed. Lori subpoenaed several witnesses, but 2 were stricken by the court, and others couldn't be located or served. At one point, Lori aggressively cross-examined a witness who had gone on a date with Charles the day before he was killed. Lori asked the woman if she went on dates with married men. You didn't even want him. But okay. Adam Cox, who is her surviving brother, testified for the prosecution, saying that he had no doubt Lori had conspired with Alex to murder Charles. When Charles was killed, he and Adam had been planning to confront Lori together about her beliefs. Kay Woodcock testified on how her brother Charles had been concerned for his safety. Charles had been hit by 2 bullets. Evidence showed that he was lying on the floor when he was shot the second time. Lori ultimately did not call any witnesses or present evidence, nor did the evidence that she said she had, by the way, nor did she testify in her own defense. That'd be really weird. How do you examine yourself when you're the lawyer and then you're also the witness? That would have been weird. She made a verbal motion for a Rule 20 judgment of acquittal, arguing that no evidence had been presented that would allow a jury to find her guilty. The judge denied her motion. In her closing argument, Lori reiterated that Charles had been killed in self-defense and told the jurors, "Don't let them turn my family tragedy into a crime." On April 22nd, 2025, Lori was found guilty of conspiring to murder Charles. After the verdict, she agreed to several aggravating factors. One of the jurors told reporters that Lori hadn't done herself any favors by choosing to represent herself in court. That's called narcissism. Quote, many days she was just smiling and laughing and didn't seem to take anything very seriously. When asked by reporters if she had a message for Lori, Kay Woodcock said, quote, we gotcha, and you're not the smartest person in the room. Everybody's going to forget about you.
Uh,
On May 1st, Lori filed a motion demanding a new trial for Charles Fallow's murder case, claiming that a juror had been unaware of her prior murder convictions. Or had been aware of her prior murder convictions. Ma'am, the whole world has been aware of your prior murder convictions. You're never going to find a fully impartial jury. What you are hoping to get, though, is a jury that is going to take what they're being shown in a courtroom to determine the rest of your life
uh,
versus their preconceived notions based on what they've seen in media. And they just there's just like, yeah, you're guilty because I think you are, without seeing the evidence. You're never going to get a juror that does not know about your past.
uh,
Sorry.
uh,
Um, so yeah. She also claimed that there had been discovery violations, prosecutorial misconduct, and a lack of impartiality by the court, and that her rights had been violated under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Her motion was denied on May 23rd. So I think the last thing here, Brandon Boudreaux's trial. So after Lori was found guilty of conspiring to murder Charles Vallow, Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell confirmed that despite Lori's multiple convictions, she fully intended to prosecute her for the murder attempt on Brandon, as it was important for Boudreaux to be able to have his story vindicated. Lori filed a motion to cancel her trial in the Brandon Boudreaux case, claiming that her constitutional right to a speedy trial had been violated. The judge rejected that motion on May 9th. During their hearing, Lori argued with Judge Birsky over jury selection and witnesses. After her motion was denied, she demanded that the judge recuse himself. God, claiming that he
uh,
proved bias against her by rejecting all her motions.
uh,
Bitch. Okay. All right. Let me continue. The judge answered that he would grant a motion by Lori if she filed one that had legal merit. Mic drop. On
uh,
May 28th, Lori filed a motion, another freaking motion, for the judge to recuse himself, alleging, quote, personal bias or prejudice and religious discrimination against her. Her motion was denied the next day. Stop trying. God, you suck at this. She
uh,
filed three motions to, God, she filed three more motions to recusal against Judge Birsky during the proceedings. I'm going to assume they were all denied. Lori's
uh,
Arizona trial, her third and final, began on May 29th with jury selection. The next day, jury selection had to be halted after Lori said she was feeling sick. On June 2nd, Lori appeared in court in a wheelchair, saying she was suffering from nausea, chills, and a headache. You have COVID. Actually, maybe we need to get her out of there. Anyways, she's fine.
uh,
She's
uh,
completely fine. So on June 2nd, she appeared in a wheelchair, saying she was suffering from nausea, chills, and headaches, and crying loudly. The trial was postponed for 2 days. On June 4th, Lori appeared again in court, not using a wheelchair this time, but insisting that she was still sick. The judge said that based on an examination that showed Lori had no medical condition preventing her from appearing, the trial would proceed. During her opening statement on June 5th, Lori claimed her innocence, disputing that the event was not a crime at all, or that a shooting had actually occurred. She discussed the meaning of the word conspiracy by comparing her own case to Judas, conspiring against Jesus, and Cain against Abel, and stated that she had no malice towards anyone and was all about spreading love. Bitch, which one was it? Cain? Cain killed Abel, right? That's the way it goes? Whatever. One of them
uh,
killed the other one. That wasn't an innocent thing. Judas, well, he may not have
uh,
killed Jesus, but Judas didn't help things. Just because it was back in the day doesn't mean that they wouldn't have gotten in trouble. Laws were just different if they existed.
uh,
Anyway, Brandon Boudreaux took the stand telling that Lori had contributed to the breakup of his marriage and recounting the moment he was shot. Prosecutor Trina Kay showed the evidence, including cell phone location data, that pointed Lori's involvement in the preparations for the murder. On June 6th, Lori cross-examined Boudreaux and the private investigator he had hired after being shot. She cast suspicion on her niece Melanie by asking if she had a financial gain at Boudreaux's death. The prosecutor mentioned that Melanie was under investigation. Of the few people who knew Boudreaux's new address in Gilbert, only his estranged then wife had connections with Lori and Alex. Also on June 6th, Lori was briefly removed from the courtroom after failing to comply with the court's instructions and disregarding sustained objections. The judge threatened to revoke her self-representation. On June 9th, Lori filed a motion to recuse Chief Judge Jennifer Green, who had denied her multiple motions to recuse Judge Birsky. She also filed a motion to dismiss abuse of discretion. Both were denied. The Jeep's rear tire had been removed to allow the shootist to aim at Boudreaux. Prosecutors showed video footage of Lori, Alex, and Chad putting a tire into the storage locker that Lori rented in Rexburg. Once again, Lori did not testify in her defense or call witnesses. She instead tried to cast doubt on nearly every piece of evidence, also suggesting that data could have been tampered with. In a tearful closing argument, she said there was no evidence against her, that she was the victim of a vendetta by Boudreaux, who blamed her for the failure of his marriage, and had been working for 6 years with law enforcement to get to her, and that it was time for healing. The prosecution summed up the evidence of a conspiracy between Lori, Chad, Alex, and Melanie. Lori again asked to be acquitted outside the presence of the jury, claiming that the presented evidence was insufficient to prove her guilty. The judge ruled against her, considering that the prosecution had presented a compelling case. On June 12th, Lori was found guilty of conspiring to murder Brandon after the jury had deliberated for less than 30 minutes. You're dead to rights at that point. Brandon Boudreaux, standing with Kay Woodcock and Colby, stated that though facing Lori at the trial had been difficult for him, he had owed it to Charles, Tylee, JJ, and Tammy to speak because he could. On June 25th, Lori filed a motion requesting a new trial, citing her own health condition during the trial and lack of impartiality by the court. On June 26th, she granted an interview with East Idaho News. She said that she still loved Chad, reaffirmed her innocence, and predicted that she and Chad would be exonerated. Her motion asking for a new trial was denied on July 22nd. Prosecutors requested a life sentence without parole for each case to run concurrently with the convictions in Idaho. Sentencing for both cases took place on July 25th. During her final testimony, Lori claimed that she had been denied a fair trial and said God would set prisoners free. Judge Birsky said Lori had shown blatant disregard for humanity and should never be released from prison. Lori was given 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole before 25 years. Doesn't matter, she won't get out. She was also fined $267,000 on each case, given a lifetime no contact order for Brandon Boudreaux, Kay Woodcock, and several other relatives of Charles Vallow. In August, Lori filed a notice of appeal for both her Arizona convictions. That same month, she was extradited back to Idaho to serve her sentences there. She was incarcerated at the Pocatello Women's Correctional Center. So, yeah,
Huh.
that is basically it. That is the
All right.
case, huge case of Lori and
Mhm.
Chad Daybell.
All right. Thank you, Tanika.
Yeah,
All right. So, yeah, I have nothing else to say about that.
yeah.
Uh,
If there's any updates as we go along,
mhm,
because again,
mhm,
like Chad Daybell is, we're
mhm.
both doing appeals. So if any meaningful updates come up, like we'll talk about it here. What I will say, because we talked about the Murdaughs before and how he was sentenced for killing his son and wife. Um, he's getting a new trial right now because of a law clerk who should have stayed the hell out of the situation. He is now getting a new friggin' trial, which sucks. But that's that
Mhm.
update. That's all I got for that.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, that's it.
All right. Okay.
All right. We'll be starting our Pride Month series this
Uh-huh.
in June.
Uh-huh.
And all of the episodes are going to be just for Pride Month. We're not going to have a 3 topic or anything like that. It's going to be all those episodes are going to be Pride Month episodes, except for the bonus episode in June. Will be catching up on news. But other than that, all going to be Pride Month episodes the entire month.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Okay. All right. See.
that's it.
All right, guys.
All right.
Bye.
Everyone, we're back on Monday with another episode.
Yes, that's for sure.
Yep. Hi, everyone, I'm coming in with another quick topic here, bonus topic at the end of the episode. Felt like doing this during a Chad Daybell and Lori Daybell episode was like, this is fine. So, just a quick little topic here. So, Canadian movie theater chain reports a $22.4 million Q1 loss. So, movie watchers might be disappointed they'll be waiting longer to see some new releases from the comfort of their own couches. But for Canada's largest cinema chain, it's reason for applause. So Cineplex CEO Ellis Jacob said that he was pleased with Netflix's recent promise to release its latest Narnia film with a 49-day exclusive theoretical window in 2027. The Netflix pledge came as other prominent studios have also committed to debuting dozens of their movies in theaters or extending their theoretical windows to at least 45 days, something Jacob sees as a win for moviegoers and cinemas alike. It actually takes away the confusion for the guests who's coming to our theater because now they know that movie is not going to be online for a much longer period of time. And what the studios are saying is we create the value for all the ancillaries because people talk about it, people go and see it, and it means a lot on an overall basis. Movie theaters like Cineplex have been urging studios and distributors to put their films in cinemas since streaming platforms became a growing part of the movie industry's business model. When theaters closed during the COVID-19 pandemic, it pushed many toward shorter theoretical windows. Some films even skipped cinemas altogether. But now that the health crisis has subsided, Jacob has seen the theaters wrestle back some debuts. When you look at Disney and Sony and some of the others, they're going longer than that because they find it's beneficial for their other platforms. But not everyone is on board with that model. Netflix has long been the most staunch holdout, preferring to put movies on its streaming service. I like to see them have a window equivalent to one of the other studios, but that to me is going to be a period of time before they get there because Ted is not a big believer in theoretical, Jacob said, referring to Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos. I think I said that right. He prefers to be on the streaming side of things. That's how he built his business. Jacob's remarks come hours after Cineplex reported a loss of $22.4 million in its first quarter, compared with a loss of $36.6 million a year earlier, as its revenue rose 16%. The Toronto-based company's loss amounted to 36 cents per diluted share for the quarter ended March 31st, and compared with a loss of 58 cents per diluted share a year earlier. The numbers pushed the company's stock down almost 10% to $10.65 around noon, despite Cineplex also reporting that its revenue totaled $291 million for the quarter, up from $251.7 million in the first quarter of 2025. While box office and food service revenues were up as films including Project Hail Mary coaxed audiences to theaters, returns in the company's advertising business were almost 19% lower than a year ago. Cineplex blamed some of the decrease on the Winter Olympics, which temporarily diverted advertising spending toward live supporting events, and the pharmaceutical industry, which dropped a lot more cash on marketing last year than this year. Meanwhile, theater attendance amounted to 9.8 million patrons, up from 8.4 million a year earlier. Box office revenue per patron was $12.94, up from $12.14 in the same quarter last year, while concession revenue per patron was $9.54, up from $9.13. Just after the quarter wrapped, Bloomberg reported in mid-April that Cineplex was sounding out peers Regal Cineworld Group and Cinemark Holdings, Inc. to gauge whether they'd want to buy the company. Asked about the report, Jacob, who is set to retire by the end of the year, said, "I can't really comment on speculations." I think it was a year or a bit ago, there was another rumor they were going to sell. So if something is valid and it benefits our shareholders, we'll look at it. But at this point, it's just a lot of talk. And with the momentum of Q1, I think we are in a good position to continue to strengthen the company going forward. And that is the update. And that is it for the episode. As mentioned, in the main part of the episode, Pride Month episodes are going to be 2 episodes a week as we normally do, with both episodes each week being 100% dedicated to Pride Month, with the exception of our bonus episode being our typical formatting for that, and then for our screen take episode, obviously being the normal format for that. But other than that, it's going to be strictly Pride Month. That starts on Monday. But yeah, other than that, I think that's it. We'll be back with that episode on Monday. Bye, everybody. If you liked what you heard with our podcast, you can head on over to our website, which is solo.to/Next Take Podcast. There you can get any of the links to any of our social media, which is Facebook, Instagram at Next Take Podcast, and Twitter, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Next Take Pod. You can also find links to our Reddit page and many other things, I'm sure. Can't remember all off the top of my head. You can also email us at mikeltanyka@gmail.com. There you can send us any inquiries you have, any questions, or also any episode ideas. And if you do have episode ideas, just make sure you put in the subject line episode ideas, and we'll add it to our list. If you also liked us, you can like us, rate us, follow us on any of your favorite podcast apps. You can rate us, however, on Spotify and Apple Podcast. We would greatly appreciate that. And we'll also move forward and share or spot a light on those who give us 5-star ratings in the future. That is it for us. We'll see you next time for the episode.